I brought Sapphire Steel to one of the largest Lorcana tournaments in Europe ever held. So far. I started out the day really strong with 4 wins and 0 losses. The fourth round was even streamed live as the featured match, which we'll be doing a VOD review on later in the video. Unfortunately, someone seemed to have poisoned my burger at lunch because in the second half of the day I only needed 1 win and 1 draw, and I finished with 4 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses. It was still a super fun event overall, and I'm incredibly grateful I got to see all my friends and be part of such a welcoming and positive community. With that being said, let's have a look at the deck I brought to the Poznan Poland 10K. The deck I brought to the tournament looks wildly different to the one I did a video on at the very start of the set, and looked a bit different to the ones people were running in the week leading up to the tournament. The first change I made was reducing Grab Your Sword to 2 copies because I expected a lot more anti-Song Ursula, and in those Emerald matchups I found Grab Your Sword to be more of a hindrance than a help because we would lose hand size but we needed to be able to ink cards. Unfortunately, we only saw one Emerald steal in the first round, and it was a new player that had never seen Cogsworth before, so we ended up winning 2-0. And that meant this was reducing Grab Your Sword from 3 to 2 copies was probably my biggest regret of this deck, as I really needed the third Grab Your Sword in some of those Amber Steel and a lot of the Ruby Amethyst matchups I saw later on in the day. I also experimented with 4 times Mickey, which in hindsight I think was a good choice, but went back to 3 times so that I could fit in 2 copies of Zeus, which was also very helpful. So I think the margins are quite slim here, but the more we see Amber in the meta, the more they're running bare necessities to remove our Fishbone Quill, which will make 4 copies of Mickey way more impactful. I also swapped 2 Benja for 2 Beast Hardheaded, as it's a singer that survives Medusa and fits the curve much better. I don't regret this choice at all, and it helped me in quite a few matches within the tournament. We also went down to free Beast Tragic Hero as it dies to Medusa and Zeus. I wouldn't go below free as we still need it as a draw engine when it is able to live. I experimented between 4 copies and 2 copies of Gaston. I settled on 3 as it is an awesome top deck that helps you scry for cards you need and synergizes very well with Lucky Dime. Ended up including 4 Develop Your Brain as after some self-reflection and discussions with friends like Specky and Moyen, I decided that the theory behind running Develop Your Brain, making you essentially a 56 card deck, was impactful enough to justify running the full playset. This is because the 1 ink cost is very negligible in Sapphire Steel, so it actually cuts our deck by bottoming cards we don't need, thinning it, and essentially improving the quality of our hand by grabbing cards we do need. The 2x Rise of Titans was really nice to counter key locations and items like Queen's Castle, McDuck's Manor, Lucky Dime, and Fishbone Quill. I replaced the 4 McDuck's Manor I was running earlier in the set with 2 Lucky Dime and 3 Belle. This is a great lore closer, and I stole quite a few games just off of Quest Belle Dime, or just play Belle and Dime from hand and then still tap for a total of 5 lore for only 13 ink. In a more Ruby heavy meta, I definitely suggest slotting in more McDuck Manors. Now let's look over some of the revisions I made to the deck after reflecting on the performance in the tournament and how the meta is looking going forward. First off, I replaced 1 Captain Hook with 1 Fiver Cannons, as the Amber Steel matchup was a big struggle in the early game due to shift Robin Hood, Queen, and Cinderella, so if you're able to snipe their 1 cost on turn 1 or 2, then we're feeling really good about reaching the mid game and starting to set up our value. Also upped Mickey to 4 copies, as I only really lost games in that tournament to missed ramp and bare necessities, forcing my Fishbone Quill to be discarded. I upped Belle from 3 to 4 copies, as both the early wheel and later dime combos are insane, and I wanted to see more consistency. What makes this combo really insane, as I mentioned earlier, is it's only 13 ink to play this combo entirely from hand, because it's 7 cost to play dime, 4 cost to play Belle, and then 2 cost to tap the dime on the Belle for an instant 5 lore. I dropped Beast Hardheaded to 1 copy as I never felt like I needed a second copy since we already have 2 Rise of Titans, and I often wanted to play different 5 cost on turn 4 in most matchups. I dropped Zeus and let it go to 1 copy so we could focus more on our core engine cards that aid our game plan. As mentioned earlier, I upped Grab Your Swords to 3 as it was my only real regret in Poland this weekend and very much negatively affected the more difficult Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel matchups. I am currently testing cutting 1 Belle and Hard-Headed Beast to fit in 2 McDuck Manor, as it makes the Ruby matchups a lot better since you can more easily commit resources to the board before a Be Prepared comes online. Now that we've gone over the decks, we can review my featured match in round 4. I was 3-0 and playing against Ruby Amethyst for the second time that day and feeling very confident with myself. Welcome back, guys. This is my round 4 match from the Lorcana Quest Tour in Poznan, Poland, one of the largest tournaments ever held for a prize pool of 10,000 euros. For context, I was 3-0 at this point. I was feeling maybe a bit nervous, but also pretty confident going into this match as I was playing on point and I wasn't bricking. That changed later on in the day, but for now, let's see how I went 4-0. It was a really close set. We had some very interesting games, and I'm going to see if we can point out any mistakes because in the moment, I felt like I didn't make many, but maybe in retrospect, we'll have something interesting to learn. So we're going to do this at 2 times speed because it was quite a long match, and yeah, let's enjoy. As you can see, while we're getting set up here and cutting decks and all that jazz, getting our hands ready, there are some very cool custom playmats that the tournament had on offer. If you either bought a VIP ticket or it was a prizing somewhere in Top Cut as well. As you can see, we started my turn here. Classic Ink 1 play Popsicle. It's going to be quite hard to see my ink here as it's a bit cropped towards the bottom. But we see an Ink Rafiki into an Olaf from our opponent. So we're probably likely to see a Smee here to challenge the Olaf, and we do. So this stops their early game pressure and buys us some time to set up our value system while they're building a board. As you can see, they can't quest with the Olaf because they want to avoid that trade. So hopefully we can get a Quill down here. Yep, there it is. And then we ink to 4. And we're looking at maybe setting up a Cogsworth on the next turn would be the ideal play here. And what's great against Ruby Amethyst is if you can set up a Cogsworth, they won't be able to deal with it. And then on the turn after, you can play a Tink, grab your swords to build their to wipe their whole board of low-cost X and freeze. We see an Ink Teeth come down. Olaf goes in for a quest. We play free, bounce it with Fox. Fox is in. There's a bit of glare on that side of the board, so luckily our opponent moved it into the middle there. We start our turn now. We ink with Quill to get out the cog. That lets us quest with Smee and then still have the resist. I think we might have had 2 cogs in hand here, so I think that was a mistake we made in the first game. Really, because Fox has 4 attack, our Smee still dies to a trade here, whereas if we had waited to get the second cog down, then our Smee would have been able to survive a Fox trade, and we could have forced them to trade at least 2 cards into it, or actually, with +2 resist, it wouldn't have been able to die at all because most of their characters, other than the Fox, are only 2 attack. Yeah, so there's the second cog. That's the first mistake we see. I remember recognizing this in the moment and telling my friends about it later. So their rabbit comes down. They're drawing some cards. So really, we just want to get as much quest in as we can before a Be Prepared comes out on the board. Maybe sing a whole new world so that we can refresh our hand's resources. So their Maui takes out our cog. So we've got 2 damage on. This is another situation where a Tink grab your sword feels great because it would wipe the damaged Maui and the other cards on the board. So yeah, again, really regret not running the free grab your swords today because it would really help in these Ruby Amethyst matchups to make that play more consistent. And you see the third Cogsworth come down now. If we still had the Smee on board, that would be pretty nice as well because we would be able to trade it into the Maui, thereby protecting our other 2 cogs, which would let us quest. So you can see how small decisions like that can really impact into larger negative or positive effects on the game down the line just for those very tiny value exchanges. So our opponent's gone up to 6 ink here, so we're looking at a Be Prepared next turn. The Tremaine comes down. Yet again, another thing to look at is if we still had the Smee and we didn't trade it into the Maui, the Smee would be able to be fodder for our Cogsworth. So we get the dime down now, which is a great way to invest resources on the board and play around their Be Prepared. You see, our opponent has no reason to be prepared here as they are winning on tempo. They have a much stronger board, so if we want to come back here, we really need to find that Tink grab your swords, or we just race them through lore, through our dime plays, maybe get a bell down so we can start tapping for 5 lore. As you can see, the Twitch chat was on the screen. I didn't really get a chance to look at it, but if I see anything funny, I'll call it out now. So we're digging here. We look for another popsicle, reset our board. If I'm tapping my hand on the table like I am there, that probably means I'm thinking. It's a nice little ADHD stim I've got going on. A hard-headed beast comes down, doesn't do anything because now that there's so much item removal in the meta, people are actually running less items. So it's only decks that rely on items but are still running them, like maybe Amber Steel for flutes and lanterns, or Sapphire Steel for obviously our lucky dimes, quills, and popsicles. Pinocchio comes down, can't target the Cogsworth, so targets the beast so that they can trade the Maui in. Another snowball effect. If the Maui wasn't there, a hard-headed beast would be able to live. So we're really struggling here because of that very small mistake we made at the start of the game. Queen's Castle comes down. That's very scary to see. If we don't have a Rise of Titans, with nothing on board, there's just no way for us to remove the Queen's Castle. So again, we want Tink, we want Grab Your Swords, and we want Rise of Titans to be able to deal with this board. So I believe we top deck the whole new world there, otherwise we would have sung it a lot earlier. That gets we sing with the Cogsworth, get it down for free. We have a dime on the board, so this is the situation where we can catch up in lore very, very quickly. We're down 4-12, but if we can clear our opponent's board, and we cannot, we don't find anything, so that's game. So I think that game was actually maybe purely lost because of that error at the very start of the game. I don't think I realized just how impactful that error was in the moment. But later on, I could definitely see the domino effects leading to that loss in game one. As you can see here, I have one card left on the table, which means I mulligan 6. All throughout this tournament, I did not mulligan less than 5 cards. You have to be very aggressive with mulligans in Sapphire Steel, because if you don't find the ramp, you're usually going to have a bad time. It's very important to hit that 5-drop on turn 4 to get ahead on value. Okay, so we ink a card. I think it was a Smee, and then we play down a Popsicle. So if we've inked a Smee, that usually means we have another Smee prepared. Olaf comes down, so we're going to be able to draw a card, ink a card, and hopefully play the Smee to challenge the Olaf again. Very nice opener. Today, in the tournament this weekend, I was very aggressive with finding that 1-2-3. I did not care about having a 5-drop unless it was a Cogsworth in a matchup that mattered, or a whole new world in hand. I just really wanted to focus on making my early game as good as possible, because I knew we could beat any other deck in the late game, except for red-blue. So Mickey comes down, Smee quest, because I recognize that Snake can trade it into it anyway, so we might as well get the 2 lore before Snake trades in, and that would allow our Mickey more space to more room to breathe. You see, our opponent's a lot more helpful than I am here. They leave their ink face up, which I don't know if that's in the official rules. I don't think it is, but it was very helpful to see that. I'm not used to playing that way, so I don't do it. And if it was in the official rules, I'd start learning. But I'd probably just forget to flip it over. So I just put all my cards face down just to make it easier for me to be able to count my ink. You see, we ink a Haram there. Usually, if I'm inking a Haram and I have Popsicles on the board, it's because, I have a whole new world in hand. So I don't really care about drawing. I'd just rather get the whole new world out and hopefully get rid of some Be Prepared. Okay, ink a Rafiki, Rabbit comes down. So this makes a whole new world play feel very better, because feel a lot better because we're building card draw. So it means less of a card advantage we're giving them when we will wheel away their hand. So Gaston is played here. It's not an ideal play before a wheel. So we're probably looking for a wheel or some kind of answers to control the board. And we see R&B talking in the chat here. He's talking about how we worked on the list together leading up to the event, but I did some crazy last-minute changes to it, which I didn't tell him about. So I wonder if he's going to react to the changes I made to the list. We do see a Queen's Castle come down. This is where we really want a Rise of Titans. I don't believe we've inked any of them. I learned very early on that we shouldn't be inking Rise of Titans before turn 4 in the Ruby Amethyst matchup, just in case a Queen's Castle comes out. So we do wheel them, and we get rid of 6 cards. Nothing major we're getting rid of, but getting rid of the locations feels nice. Okay, yep, there is the Rise of Titans. I actually remember now, I think we pulled that out of a Gaston, so that was a very nice pick for us. And now the bells come down. It's going to have 10 lore by now, I think, from the looks of it. We're at about 8 ink, so by next turn, we're looking at 10. I moved my inks in piles of 5, so actually we can see we're at 11 lore now, because it's 2 piles and then a new pile I'm building out of just 1 card. Okay, so our opponent sings Friends with Rabbit. They're looking for some answers, maybe looking for a Be Prepared they can throw down to counter the spell, but they're still at 6 ink, so they're not going to be able to get a Be Prepared until next turn. They find the Maui to remove the Gaston, but now Maui's only on 1 HP, so if we can find a Tink, or just a Grab Your Swords, we're going to be able to deal with a lot of this board. Mickey can also just on its own trade into the Maui. If we find Dime now, we're going to be able to get plus 10 lore from the Bell, for only a cost of 9 ink. Okay, Cogsworth comes down, it trades in. Not Cogsworth trades in, but Mickey trades in. And then we Zeus for Rabbit. Just so we have some I don't know if Zeusing the Rabbit is correct, but I think maybe I didn't want to commit too much to the board in case we had a B prep. So I'd rather just wanted to protect my Bell after questing with it. We can see they go for the Fox here. My opponent makes a major error in not remembering that Cogsworth has +1 resist. He tells me that it's banished. I remember that the resist means it lives, and it's just one of those things in tournaments where you're not going to get the indicators you get on Pixel Ball, and you have to remember these interactions. You can let your opponent take that sort of play back if they're missing information, but in a tournament, generally, you let your opponent commit to the play they made if they've already revealed information. So because they played the card from their hand, it already bounced the card back to their hand, you usually wouldn't let your opponent take back that kind of play, especially in a high stakes event like this one. Someone says in the chat, paper Cogsworth too strong. That's very true. If you can't see the resist effect, it's hard to remember the combat math and how to trade. I'm looking through the, I believe, discarded hand here. Yep, we just whole new worlded. Sung with Cogsworth. Got rid of another Queen's Castle, so we now know that there's only one Queen's Castle left in their deck. There we can see I quest and dimes. That goes +10 lore. We've gone 15 lore in 2 turns from the Belle alone, which is pretty nuts. And we're just digging for some more cards here so that we can commit to board. But at this point, we're at 19 and 1. I remember not the commentator, but the person running production next to me often needed to ask what the lore count was. I told them, and it's like, yep, I'm at 4 lore. And they're like, sorry, 9 lore. I'm like, sweet. And then they come back 20 seconds later and they're like, wait, what lore are you at? I'm at 19. And they couldn't believe that I'd gone +10 lore in just a few seconds. I think it was the first time they'd seen the dime combo. And that's where the Be Prepared comes down. Clears the board, but at that point it's game. I've got a dime on the board. All I have to do is play one card, dime it, and that's GG, instant lore. So now we are going to game 3 of this set. It takes me a bit to get my deck together ready to shuffle, mainly because a lot of my cards are upside down in my ink pile, so I just tend to look through them and make sure they're the right way up before I put them into my deck to shuffle. As you can see, once again, I am mulliganing away 6 cards. This is especially because going second against red-purple makes this matchup a lot more coin flippy, so you really want to be looking for specific answers. In this kind of matchup, if I have ramp, I'm tempted to hold on to Tink Grab Your Swords just so that I have a good follow-up to reset the board and hopefully gain some tempo back. In Lorcana, you have quite a significant first advantage. You really have to play around that. You really have to play around that fact when you're going second. Can't see what I inked, but we play a hook, which is a great way to contest an Olaf. This means they can't quest because they're going to wait and. This means they can't quest because they don't want to lose their Olaf traded 1-1. Crab comes down, but it can't do anything because I haven't exerted any of my characters. This is the perfect position you want to be in against Ruby Amethyst because we have completely shut down their early game because they're not running Teeths and Ambitions, which is a great card to counter this sort of hook play. And this buys us time to be able to set up our Quill and start ramping into our value. Our opponent inks Maui, plays a Queen's Castle. This is actually quite difficult for us because if we don't have Rise of Titans, we don't have a good answer to Queen's Castle with only 6 damage on board represented by Smee and Hook. We will at least be able to clear all of their characters though, just with the Hook and Smee alone. The play I decide to make here is play Tink, set up a board clear for the next turn, and also trade the Hook into the Crab to remove that, and then set up the 4+ free damage on Smee and Tink to be able to trade into Queen's Castle when the turn passes back to me. Can't quite see what that card is. They just turned 4 ink sideways, so I assume it's a rabbit. And now they've inked a friend. Red Purple, if we're assuming a whole new world is coming soon, rightfully so, doesn't lean too much into card draw. So that's why it's good to ink cards like Friends if you're expecting a whole new world. Okay, and there is the whole new world, so our opponent absolutely made the correct decision to play more to board instead of play for card draw. Okay, Quill comes down, we ink a card. Mickey comes down, so we ramp another card, and then we trade Tink and Smee into the Queen's Castle, which lets us, which is pretty good, as now if we do clear them on board, we don't have, or they be prepared, we don't have to worry about them still having a location on the board. Okay, Maui comes down to get rid of the Tink. Now Maui's on 1 HP. So this is where a Grab Your Swords or a Tink would be really good to come back on board. They ink a Crab and quest for Rabbit. And Olaf. Turn passes back to me. I reset. I draw a card. For 6 ink, I play a Gaston, then I scry for a card, hopefully looking for an answer to challenge this board. I believe I haven't inked this turn, so if I do find a Grab Your Swords, I will be able to Quill plus ink and hardcast it. Okay, Mickey trades in to remove the Maui. I Quill to ramp. Play 2 for Smee. Now we're threatening 5 Law with just 2 cards, and if they do Tremaine, they can or Medusa, they can only get rid of the Smee. In these Ruby Amethyst matchups, you never really want to commit only 1 card at a time, unless it's a small card, mainly because of Tremaine. Tremaine's become a lot more common these days as everyone's playing around the Medusa stat line, so you really have to play around it. They ink a goat and play 4, so I believe that's a rabbit. Turn passes back to me, I reset. A Belle comes down, so now we are threatening a lot of Law. Zeus comes down to clear the Fox, which could threaten my Gaston, and we quest for 5. Smee takes 1 damage though, as is the end of turn effect, because we don't have either Cogsworth to block the damage or a captain character on board. Opponent's taking some time to think here. I don't think they have the Be Prepared, otherwise they probably would have played it here, just quest, be prepared. So we're quite lucky in that regard that our Belle might stick. We play the Crab to remove the Gaston. Actually, I believe after this game, they told me that they did have a way to remove the Belle, but they thought it would be better to remove the Gaston because they didn't want me to be able to sing A Whole New World. I think my hand size was quite limited at this time. I Quill to ink a card, play Tink to remove Maui, then play Grab Your Swords to remove the other 2 cards, and then quest for 5 with Belle. This should put me up to 10 Law. And now, next turn, we are threatening a instant win with Belle plus Dime. Tremaine comes down, I decide to remove the Tink so that there's a chance my Belle lives. The only way this gets punished is if they have a Fox. They do not have a Fox, so Belle is safe. If I have a Dime here, that is game over. And with only 1 minute 15 on the clock, it's looking pretty nice. We do not have the Dime, but we are able to still commit 2 things to board and put us up to 15 Law. Be Prepared would be very punishing here, but we're up 15 and 8, so we'd still feel pretty good about it, as once you have 13 ink, you can play Dime plus Belle from hand and instantly get 5 Law. So 15 or higher is a very nice number to be at. At 17 Law, you can do the same thing with a Gaston for 15 ink. Tremaine comes down, I decide to remove the Cogsworth as I really want the card draw, digging for the Dime or A Whole New World. I hardhead beast and pass because I really want to look for that card draw. They quest for 2, going up to 10, then bounce Tremaine back to hand with Snake and play the Tremaine back down, which removes the hard-headed beast. But because I played another card, I'm still able to protect my beast so that I can dig for answers. If I'm able to find Whole New World, I'll be able to sing Whole New World and then hopefully find the Dime plus Belle combo. Never feels good to draw a Quill in the late game. It's an instant ink with really no other value. Okay, so we Quill another card. So this looks like we're setting up the Whole New World. And there it is. We hard cast for Whole New World. I believe because I wanted to keep the beast open to quest if I needed to. In hindsight, I think that's probably a mistake. Because we could have just played the Tink Grab Your Swords from hand. It's probably better to just always sing the Whole New World so that we have more options with our ink. I think I might have counted my ink though, and I still had enough ink left over for a Belle Dime combo even after hardcasting Whole New World. Okay, time has gone to 1 second, so we are, I believe, supposed to be in overtime, but the judges just let us play on, and as it was the lunch break. I'm not sure how I feel about that ruling. I feel like it should be consistent with every round. It should instantly go into the 5-round overtime. But I think because we were the featured match and it was the lunch break, they just wanted to let us finish our full game. And Medusa comes down, removes the Beast. This is what makes me a bit iffy about Beast in the current meta. as powerful as it is, very weak to Medusa, and along comes Zeus. Gaston comes down. This is where we're looking for a bell or a dime to just get those final bits of lore. Haram comes down to draw cards. Mickey comes down to keep ramping. Will activate so we can ramp even more. Ink Rise of Titan. And Smee comes down. So we're just trying to play as much of a board as possible to force them, if they don't have a Be Prepared, to just force them to use other forms of removal. I think I had a whole new world in hand, so I wasn't too worried about the Be Prepared. I don't think I needed to play the last Smee. The last Smee was unnecessary. Yeah, as you can see, we have 16 ink here because I have 3 piles of 5 and then 1 extra on the side. Can't tell what I inked at 2 times speed. So we hard cast the whole new world for 5, which leaves us with 11 ink left over, and then with Quill plus ink, that should, oh yeah, no, we're at 13 ink left over exactly, so we have exactly enough for Belle plus Dime from hand. And GG, that's game. Yeah, so overall, that was a very interesting matchup. My opponent played really well. When Sapphire Steel does what it wants to do, its game plan is completely unstoppable. The only way you beat Sapphire Steel, other than Red Blue, is by beating it in the early game before they can set up their value engines. I hope you enjoyed that match. As you can see, we lost game 1 probably entirely to quite a minor error that snowballed into a much larger effect on the game. So that's a lesson to really be careful in those earlier stages of the games in card games. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Overall, the rest of the event went a bit tough for me, but I'm really happy with my play. I did make some mistakes, but I learned a lot, and I'm ready to go compete in Lille. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I've never done this type of video before, but if I do compete in more tournaments where I go on a featured match like in Lille, and you like this VOD review style where I get to do a post-mortem of the game and see any mistakes I played or any plays that were good to teach you more about how to play the decks that I play or the sort of fundamental card game thinking that I go through, then please let me know in the comments down below.